said, am I important enough is a question that someone might ask. The other end of that, where the workplace might become toxic, is where someone thinks I am important. You better serve my needs. Right?
Sure.
Or I deserve attention. You need to give me attention.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you have someone like that on your team instead of someone who says, am I important enough, to someone who says, I am important?
It's a really good question. You bring up kind of a conversation about boundaries, maybe, because the person that I'm imagining, I'm thinking about somebody who might just be a little bit proud, and then I'm also imagining somebody who could be really narcissistic and toxic, and so each of those could you might take different approaches, because if someone's going to be, there's some people that you just have to remove from the team, right? If it's more an extreme case. If I were to, what I might try to see, well, how toxic is this person? I don't know yet. And I'm kind of feeling the situation out. Using the exact same model, if the idea, if you use Ferguson's model, would be that if you include, which we obviously should, our sinful tendencies into the conversation, we must do that. Then what we see is, if I have a need for attention, I'm driven to get that need met. So if people are not voluntarily meeting that need for me, my need for attention does not go away. So I'm going to be driven to do it. Now, I might, based on that, decide, okay, fine, I'm going to take attention because this need will absolutely be met. And that would be a problematic, as opposed to, let me find healthy relationships where I can respectfully ask for attention to be met. And then this relationship is mutually giving, right? So I'm interested in this other person's needs as well. That's the healthy model. When the need is not being met, then what we're vulnerable to when it comes to temptation would be to demand the need to be met and even to take it, whether people want to give it to us or not. And that's where we get more into maybe what you're describing. So what's interesting is, in some cases, the actual solution might be to give attention, because even though it's not being asked for in a way that's desirable or healthy, and that there's some things that are sinful to it, what we don't do is withhold the need to say, well, when you deserve attention, I'll give it to you, but your behavior is such that you don't deserve it, therefore we're not going to give it. That's not a good idea, because it's a legitimate, real need, just like the need for food and air and water and shelter. So the person still needs it, even if they're not asking for it in the right way. But do we give it to them on their terms if their behavior is dysfunctional or even toxic? Absolutely not. So we give them what they're looking for. And for some people, that will actually turn down. It's maybe counterintuitive because you think it's going to make it worse. You're feeding the beast, right? They're already an attention monster, and we're feeding them attention. Isn't that going to make it worse? Not always. In some situations it might, and in that case I would talk more about boundaries and perhaps even removing the person. But other times that person is just like starving for attention, and they finally are given it in a healthy and meaningful way. That's grace. And that can be transformative. That actually might do something to change the other parts of the person's behavior that you don't want.
Yes.
So the short answer is it depends. But if you can use this model in a way that would be helpful, there would be giving the need that's being asked for. And then there's always other needs, like respect.
Uh-huh.
I could be very shaming to somebody if their behavior is not desirable. But the problem is, not only am I not, in this case, meeting their need for attention because I'm intentionally withholding it, but also in broader terms, I'm also not meeting their need for respect because I'm not honoring them. I've chosen to shame them as a form of punishment to see if I can manipulate their behavior in that way. Well, now it's adding gasoline to the fire. So there's a general awareness of other needs. Well, let me just be consistently loving with this person. And here's some specific ways to do that. But I know something particular about them. They need attention. Can I give them a measure of that in a healthy way? And let's see if they'll respond.
Yes. And I'll go to the next question. But one thing, stood out is not just give and receive love, but give and receive relational needs, because you made the difference between giving and receiving and taking. So you give and receive.
Right. Right. I mean, if somebody stole because they were hungry, you'd address the stealing, but you wouldn't not feed them.
Yes.
Right. And so so that remains part of it. But I don't think sometimes we don't think about these types of needs in the same way. We think these are more conditional, and I would argue they're not.
Okay, so going on to the next question. How can we identify the needs of our team members? And how can we meet their relational needs while also, fulfilling our own needs at work? You talked about the leader. How can someone meet the needs of the team members, identify it first of all, and meet their needs, and have his or her needs also fulfilled?
Yeah. I mean, part of it, I think, and I've seen this work in the workplace, is if the leaders at the top are in agreement that something like this would be helpful and they want to incorporate it, that's really, I think, the first step. Is it's difficult if this is not already part of the culture and someone was thinking, I'd like to make this change in my organization, part of some of the initial steps is you want to take the decision makers, however that works in the organization, and introduce them to this idea, and then see if they will go through a process just among the leadership of learning what relational needs are and how to meet them, because you want buy-in from the top. If you're going to have something work in an organization that's going to be sustainable, but you have leaders that you don't have buy-in, then you're going to have people trying to get rid of it. So it's helpful to let the leaders themselves get introduced to this, and then to go through some kind of process. Like to whatever cultures this might make sense, to say, why don't we let's do a workshop, or maybe even a retreat. Let's take some time as leaders and say, we're going to take a weekend or a week, or during the week, a couple of hours here and there, and we're going to get together. We're going to familiarize ourselves with material that teaches this, but let's identify each other's relational needs, and let's spend time meeting each other's relational needs and figuring out what can that look like in the workplace. Well, then over time, if you get the buy-in among your leaders that are making the decisions, now you're ready to introduce this to the organization as a whole. But you've probably, if you've actually gone through that process, your leaders have gotten healthier. And people, before they even let others know what's happening, some people might start noticing something's different here. I think people seem to be treating each other a little bit differently. And I kind of like this. Now, sometimes I'll be honest with you, sometimes this makes people nervous, because they're like, whoa, I'm not, because if I'm going to tell you what my relational needs are, I'm revealing something about myself to you, and now I'm vulnerable. Maybe I don't want you to know that. And there's going to be some people who are like that. What do you do with that person? Well, part of it is you apply this model to them, and you treat them with respect, and you don't push, right? And so it takes nuancing. You'd have to kind of read it. And also, different cultures are the same. Some are like, there's more openness and freedom to be kind of take time with each other and to be more conversational. And so in others, it's like interactions are fast and they're not very deep. So even then, you can still do this to some extent, you know. So ideally, I would say you go through a process where you create this environment where people are encouraged to talk openly about what they need, and then to show them, let me meet those needs a little bit. If that's not doable, or it doesn't seem appropriate, you know, people are kind of like, I don't really feel like I want to do that. Then you can also know what needs are in general, and then just decide as leaders, we're just going to start treating people according to what these needs are. And we're going to hit the target sometimes. When we miss the target, we're not going to hurt anybody, right? If you have a high need for appreciation and you have a low need for encouragement, if I say something encouraging to you, you're more likely to just kind of go, that didn't really, you know, but it didn't hurt you either, right? So part of it is, what can we as an organization do just to treat people better? Well, let's learn what the needs are, and then let's just make that how we treat people in general, so we don't have to ask them to be super specific on what their relational needs are. But if the relationships warrant it, and you can be more open and more vulnerable, and everybody feels safe doing so, because that's a security thing, that's a relational need. You want everybody to feel safe. Then you can, then let's get a little bit more specific. And so that's where you can say, I know this particular employee has this particular need, and so let me go out of my way to address them like that.
So what you're saying is to be very intentional about our awareness of people around us.
Yeah, that's right. Just like, if you just knew. So something I do personally, and this came in really handy at the Salvation Army, I just learned about the relational needs, and I had been using them in different contexts. And so finally, when I got to the Salvation Army, I already had that kind of as my filter. So just anybody that I meet, that's what I'm doing. I'm like, well, I don't know you. You've got whatever these needs are, you know, that you have. You're on the list somewhere of what these relational needs are. And so, but if I'm just going to be a loving and gracious person, just in general, this is how I'm going to treat people. And then I'll notice what lands. I'll literally just read what people respond to. At the Salvation Army, I was dealing. So this is in the United States, in Dallas, Texas, large. For some of your listeners who may not be familiar, it's a big city. You know, there's a few million people in this metroplex, and quite a few homeless people, both transient people who are not staying in Dallas, but they're just moving across the country, but also permanent. It's a big issue. The population's pretty high. And so I was focused on working through the Salvation Army, working with homeless men who had addictions. So I would try, when I was new and I didn't quite know what I was doing, I would perceive a high need for comfort. There's a lot of pain. And so I would try to express what would be comforting to somebody. And I would see people shut down very quickly. They're not interested. They don't want to go there. And at first, I wasn't quite sure what that was. But then but as I learned more about addiction, and I learned more about where they had been, if they had been through prison, how self-protective they might be. I'm learning more about poverty. I'm learning more about all of the things that come with the men in this population and what they're struggling with. And I realized they need comfort, but I'm moving in too quick. They don't know me. Why are they going to open up? If someone's going to let you comfort them, or if you're going to let somebody comfort you, you're opening your heart to them, right? Well, they've got very good reason to be defensive and closed, and they don't know me. And I haven't earned a place to speak into their lives in that way. Not yet. Will I? I don't know. Maybe someday. I hope so. So I started in the wrong place. I wasn't wrong, but I started in the wrong place. I needed to start with respect. And that's where I missed the target. In fact, I was doing it, but kind of like overdoing it. And I was like leading in, like, so if you lead in with comfort or affection, obviously that can be inappropriate in certain situations. But respect is something that you can always do from a distance and do safely. And you're not going to, in fact, if you're going to have any chance of getting further into the relationship, if you don't start with respect with a stranger, you've got zero chance. So so what I just did there was I'm just going to be the respect guy. I'm going to lay it on. That's what I'm going to lay on thick is respect. And so not only did that put them in a position sometimes, not always, to be a little bit more open, but respect is its own thing. I'm not doing it just to get them to open up. It does have that effect sometimes, but if they're in a situation where the inherent dignity they have because they are made in the image of God is not consistently by society honored and respected, and I'm using the word in the definition, expressed back to them, not recognized, then that's a gaping hole. And if you're not respected, you think about that sequence of what is that going to do to your thinking? Well, I'm trash. I don't have any place in this society. What difference does it make? Why am I even trying to get off the street? Why should I quit? It's like I've been using drugs and committing crimes to pay for that. And why should I stop? But nobody cares. What difference does it make? Nobody sees me. I don't matter. I'm not human. Right. So, and then the feelings and behaviors that would result from that are pretty obvious. That's where they are. A lot of the men that I was working with, that's where the day that I meet them, they're already there. So I'm like, if I can do nothing with you for the next 6 months, but just treat you with respect every single day, then maybe if the people around you aren't seeing it yet, maybe you're beginning to see within yourself, once again, the dignity that you still have. That didn't go anywhere. No one can take the image of God away from somebody. So that would be something that I did of like, what does it look like if I'm just going to know the needs and just choose to treat people that way, even if I don't get a chance to know them well enough to know what their specific needs are? I can just go in with something like respect. And then if I stick around long enough, I can begin to read some of the others, but I have to be cognizant of, what kind of relationship do I have with this person? What's appropriate? Comfort might come way later, even if that's what they're desperate for.
That was profound. It almost sounds to me that it's like what you said, like a basic need, food, clothing, and shelter. But, when you don't have that need fulfilled, you literally starve. You literally say, I don't matter, or you go to the end. Wow.
There's some extreme versions of that. There's more subtle versions too,
yes.
but that's like, that really clearly expresses the idea. And that's just in Dallas. I mean, the homeless population in Dallas compared to the rest of the world is still doing pretty well. Right. So there's just, think about the lack of dignity and respect in some places. It's just, it's unimaginable to me, sometimes unimaginable, but to some of those who might be listening in, it's not unimaginable because it's where they live and where they work. So I recognize that too.
Yes, it's experienced around them. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
So moving on to so because you talked about relationship needs, let me just go back. So sure. This is, Yale, this is what I took with you, and I assessed, my needs. If somebody wants to find out what these needs are so that they are informed and they are aware, okay, these are the types of needs that are there. So let me equip myself and be aware of it so that I can help my team members, or I can, be better in relating to others I work with. Where can they find that? How can anybody listening educate themselves on these are the needs that are there? Because you mentioned respect, you mentioned attention, you mentioned acceptance, but there are other needs, where can somebody go and find what these needs are and educate themselves on it? Because the other thing is that, in this little piece of paper that you gave me, there's a definition for each of the needs. So it helped me to understand. So how can somebody listening get that information or more?
Sure. I'd say the best place to go, if you're in a position where you can buy some resources, if you want to get a book for yourself or you want to get a number of books for your team, there's a website, greatcommandment.net. Greatcommandment.net. That's easy to remember. And so you'll see a ministry there. It's called the Great Commandment Network. And on the website, there's a number of resources. There's actually a resource tab. You click on that and you can see a number of books that are there for sale. And so in just about every book I can think of that is going to come out, they're all going to talk about this same model. They're all going to talk about relational needs. They're going to, as you said, offer a definition for each of the individual needs. There's going to be some kind of assessment test that's typically offered where you can take the test yourself and then see how you score, and then to see, it'll help you begin to understand what some of your own, what needs are most important to you, which can change over time or given the circumstances. It's like if generally you're a confident person, but you take a huge financial hit, and now all of a sudden you're worried about money all the time, and then you take the test, all of a sudden your need for security goes way up. That's just because of your circumstances, right? So things like that are also reflected in the results. So it's a good tool. So I'd say, yeah, greatcommandment.net. A lot of books there. One that's like really in depth. Again, it's designed for couples counseling, but I use the principles and the discussion for a lot of things. This Intimate Encounters book is they're still selling that one. I looked on the website before our conversation to confirm that. But another thing you can do, it's like if you just real quick want to get started, if you just Google David Ferguson 10 relational needs, something like that, your top hits are going to be just a PDF that you could download that are the relational needs. Like before our conversation today, because I have a million copies of this, but I'm like, well, let me just get one real fast. So I didn't know what you were going to ask me. So here's your top 10 relational needs. But the way I found this was just real quick. I got online, Googled David Ferguson, 10 relational needs, hit print, and then there you go. I've got a PDF. So you can begin the conversation right now for free. But then if you like it, and you want to go into more depth, you want to start buying resources and learning more, I'd say greatcommandment.net is a good place to start.
Many years ago, I read Robert Sutton's book, Good Boss, Bad Boss. Completely changed my thinking on the workplace.
There are people I work with that I've known a really long time and we're really good friends. So I might hug them when I see them if I haven't seen them, but I certainly don't go around hugging everybody, And so